What is this? Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 16. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Paribrajacharya Sutara Sata Shri Srimadesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sila Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय श्री वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय जमुना माई की जय गंगा माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय तुलसी देवी की जय Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse number 16. Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartinorjuna mamupetya tu konteya punarjamma navidyate. Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartinorjuna mamupetya tu konteya punarjamma navidyate. Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartinorjuna mamupetya tu konteya punarjamma navidyate. Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartinorjuna mamupetya tu konteya punarjamma navidyate. Brahma, up to the Brahmaloka planet, Bhuvanat, from the planetary systems, Loka, planets, Puna, again, Avartinaha, returning, Arjuna, O Arjuna, Mam, unto me, Upetya, arriving, to, but, Konteya, O son of Kunti, Punarjama, rebirth, na, never, Vidyate, takes two. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. From the highest planets in the material world down to the lowest are all places of miseries where repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Purport. All kinds of yogis, karma, jnana, hatha, etc., eventually have to attain devotional perfection in bhakti yoga, or Krishna consciousness, before they can go to Krishna's transcendental abode and never return. Those who attain the highest material planets, or the planets of the demigods, are again subjected to repeated birth and death. As persons on earth are elevated to higher planets, people in higher planets such as Brahmaloka, Chandraloka, and Indraloka fall down to the earth. The practice of sacrifice, called Panchagni Vidya, recommended in a Katha Upanishad, enables one to achieve Brahmaloka. But if in Brahmaloka one does not cultivate Krishna consciousness, then he must return to this earth. Those who progress in Krishna consciousness in the higher planets are gradually elevated to higher and higher planets, and at the time of universal devastation are transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom. When there is devastation of this material universe, Brahma and his devotees, who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness, are all transferred to the spiritual universes and to specific spiritual planets according to their desires. Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartino arjuna mamupetya tu konteya punarjamana vidyate. In this verse, some words are repeated from the previous verse. The previous verse is Mamupetya punarjama dukalayam shashvatam. Mamupetya. And again here the same words are used. Mamupetya too. However, Mamupetya. Mam means Krishna. Mam is a personal pronoun that means the person of Krishna. Krishna is speaking And he's saying, Mam upetya, one who achieves me, punarjama naiti, doesn't have to take another birth in the material world. What does that mean? That means that by achieving Krishna, we become free of all designations. We become free of all attachments to the material world. We become free of all debts that we have accumulated in the material world. And by Krishna's association, this freedom, this purification takes place. And once we are free of the debts and commitments to the material world, we are eligible to be transferred to the spiritual world. Going to the spiritual world requires some qualification. Even in the material world, if you want to go from the third world country to a first world country, there's a lot of trouble. You need special visas, you need applications, you need this form, that form, and it is almost impossible. It is very difficult for a third world citizen to come to the first world. For someone from Africa or India to come to Europe or America, they make it as difficult as possible, because the standard of living in the first world, in Europe and America, is higher than the standard of living in the third world. So spiritually speaking, there is no comparison between the standard of living in the material world and the standard of living in the spiritual world. The standard of living in the material world is surcharged with misery, with impermanence, and with ignorance. It is built into the material world. Ignorance and entanglement is automatically built into the material world, because the material world is not really our place. It is a prison house. It is called Durga. Durga means prison, and Durga is the deity which controls this prison. Srishti Stiti Pranaya Sadhana Shakti Eka Chayeva Yasya. She is the shadow of Krishna, Vibharti Durga. Ichhanurupamapi Yasya Chachestate Sa. Shadow of who? Govindam Adi Purusham. Tamaham Bhajami. Because this material world works as the shadow of Govinda, by worshipping Govinda, we can come from the shadow to the light. But it is our choice. The sun is shining, but if we remain indoors, if we remain in the cave, we cannot take advantage of the sunlight. But if we go into the sunlight, we become purified, we become healthy. In fact, if one desires good health, it is recommended to worship the sun god. And when Prabhupada was very ill, in his early years in America, he suffered a heart attack. He couldn't get cured in America. He immediately requested his few disciples, please let me go to India. And in India, because of the sunlight and the atmosphere, he became healed. So when we take shelter of Krishna, we become purified. Therefore Krishna says here, Mamupetya. In the previous verse, verse 15, he says, Mamupetya punarjamma dukkalayama shashvatam. He defines this material world as dukkha and ashashta, miserable and temporary. And in this verse, verse 16, he says, Brahma, beginning from Brahmaloka, Brahma, beginning from Brahmaloka, Bhuvanat, through all the planetary systems, no matter where you go, Punarjama, Punar Avartino, a place where you keep coming back. Krishna repeats this message many times in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 9th chapter, verse 21. He says, Tetam bhutva sarvaloka vishalam, kshine punya martya loka vishanti. That even if you go to the heavenly planets, kshine punya, when you punya, when your good deeds are exhausted, again you come to the material world. You cannot live in the material world and be inactive. Some activity will be there. And because the material world is the prison house, is the Durga, it is the prison house of the creation, the situation is so organized that we cannot be happy here any more than a citizen can be happy in the prison. The prison is not meant to be a happy place. It is designed purposely to give pain to the prisoner so he can understand that this is not a place I want to be. I am suffering in this prison. I want to be free. I want to go out. But there is a price to be paid to go out. And the price to be paid is you have to become free from the debts to the government. Whatever criminal act you have performed to come into the prison, you have to atone for that act and again accept the law of the government, then you will be freed. So what is our sin? Our sin or our entanglement begins by thinking we are separate from Krishna. Now Krishna is our Supreme Father and he is unlimited, full of knowledge, full of bliss. He is totally independent. And because we are minute particles of Krishna, we also have this minute independence, which we can exercise. And for some reason or another, we have come into the material world. It is practically impossible to trace out how we came to the material world. It is said that when a soul first falls from the spiritual sky, he falls as a Brahma, or he falls in Brahmaloka, the topmost Siddha, planet of the universe. And gradually, by becoming entangled in the material world, it sinks lower and lower down the planetary systems. And when he comes to the Earth planet, he has the choice to again become Krishna conscious. You can also become Krishna conscious in the upper planetary systems. In fact, in Brahmaloka, the Brahma and his devotees, especially in this universe, are all devotees of Krishna. And when the universe is wound up, Brahma and his associates go back to the spiritual world. But in the heavenly planets, even up to Brahmaloka, there is great enjoyment. And the enjoyment is so great that we forget that it is a temporary place. We forget that even though in the heavenly planets, the living entity gets a body which lives for millions and millions of years, that end of the millions of years will come, and again he will come down to the material world. He will come down to this level, Bhuloka. And in Bhuloka, there is neither excessive happiness here, nor is there excessive pain. You can actually live peacefully, and you have the chance to actually think about your existential situation. When there is not too much enjoyment, not too much pain, you can become equiposed. You can look at the situation with some detachment. And the detachment is that who am I, ke ami, kene amare jare tapa try. Who am I? Why am I suffering in this material world? Here nai jani, I don't know this. Kemone hita hoy. What I don't know how to benefit myself. In fact, if we look at the world we live in, if we look at the present situation, 99.9% of the human beings are simply absorbed in material enjoyment. They simply want more and more sense enjoyment. And that is called lobe or greed. There is no end to lobe. There is no end how much you want. The more you have, the more you want. Look at the predominant countries, Europe and America. They have a good situation, but they want more and more and more. That is the whole history of the predominant race on this planet. That the greed is not satiated. They want more and more and more. But because there is a limited amount of happiness which we can have in this material world, on this planet, on the earth planets. We have a chance to step back and ask, why am I here? Even if I'm enjoying material life, even if I become mentally balanced and accept my material situation, and nobody really accepts it because we have to die, and everybody knows they may be conscious of it or they may not be conscious of it, but the fact that we will die, it is ever present in our conscious and subconsciousness, and that spoils any material enjoyment that we may have. And we try to counteract the miseries of material life by making a permanent solution on this material plane with a wife, with children. But wife, children, house, community, bank balance, these things which we build to try and protect us from suffering, these are our soldiers, our protectors. But there is one problem. Atma Saineshu Atsatsu Api. Although we put so much effort into our material situation to protect ourselves, it is asatsu, it is temporary. And this is also was explained in the verse before. Dukalayam ashashvatam. Even if we ignore the pain and the suffering and the work we have to put in, and we have to work very hard to become materially successful. Even though sometimes people become materially successful without apparent any work, you can be sure that the work was done in previous lives. Nobody is born the same. Everybody is born differently. When I was a teenager, that was one of the big problems I had with philosophy. That we are not born equal. Each one of us is born in a different situation. Someone is born in a good family with intelligence, with money. Some is born in a poor family. Some is born handicapped, ill. So many handicaps are there. So where is the fairness? I can understand that the laws of karma works fairly for everybody, but if we begin our life in this material world with various kind of impediments, that precludes a previous situation. So even as a teenager, I understood that everything in the universe is exact. Everything is perfect. The sun is moving perfectly. The seasons follow each other perfectly. Night follows day perfectly. So why is it that when we are born, it is not perfect? Why we are born in different situations, almost by random? Is it random? Nothing else is random in the material world. Everything is exact. So there must be an exact reason why I'm born with a silver spoon in my mouth, or I am born in misery. Why I'm born with intelligence and beauty, or why I'm born with ignorance and ugliness. There must be a reason. And I couldn't solve this problem. And I was a very avid reader, and by Krishna's mercy, I came across a book on magic, on the occult. And this author, he believed in reincarnation, and he explained the theory of reincarnation. Then I understood. That is the answer. Because of our previous activities, because of our previous lives, because of what we've done in the past, that is determining how we start in the present. And of course, from that point to understanding that we are spirit is a very small step. Therefore, in materialistic societies and in materialistic religions, there is no doctrine of reincarnation. When King Constantine, who was Roman Emperor Constantine, who became the first Roman emperor as the head of the Christian church, sometime in 300 BC, in 300 AD, he had a big meeting in a place called Nicaea in present-day Turkey. And in Nicaea, they established the doctrines to be put down. The doctrines of the Bible, the doctrines of the teachings of Christ. And they completely took out any reference to reincarnation. Why is that? Because if you understand reincarnation, It's a very small step to understand you're a spirit soul. And once you understand you're a spirit soul, your attachment to material life becomes less and less and less. And the more you're detached from material goods and material things, the less people can control you. The less the government can control you. The less the king can control you. Your boss can control you. Your wife or your husband can control you. The more you become spiritually awakened, the more you become free from material control. And you become spiritually awakened, then the next question is, I am spirit, and who created me? Of course, we are eternal. And when you ask this question, Paramatma will answer, Jiver Swarupoi Nitya Krishna Das, that the Swarupa, or the essence of the spirit soul, is that is the eternal servant of God. And then if you're fortunate enough to meet a pure devotee of Krishna, either directly or indirectly, then you will understand that you're not only the servant of God and that God is Krishna. That God is the supreme Govinda Adi Purusham, the origin of everyone. And that can be direct or indirect. We have many of us who became devotees of Krishna consciousness, devotees of Srila Prabhupada. We understand that our awakening in spiritual life came about by Srila Prabhupada. Some of us directly, who met him, but some never even met him, but they got one of his books, went to one of his temples, saw one of the deities that he established, and simply by that indirect connection, even to this day, you can become purified, you can become enlightened. Purification means enlightenment. You become enlightened of your spiritual identity in relationship with Krishna. If you don't, then mamupetya tu konteya punarjamana vidyate. That abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartino Arjuna. If you don't become conscious, then punaravartino. You keep taking birth after birth after birth in the material world. Tu, mamupetya tu. Tu means however, Krishna says. Mamupetya, if you achieve me, punarjamana vidyate. You do not have to take another birth in this material world. So, how do we accept this benediction? What is the quickest and easiest way to understand our spiritual identity that is given to us in this Kali Yuga, but the great mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And here in the West, it is being given to us by the great mercy of Srila Prabhupada, who was ordered by his own guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to come here. Prabhupada, when he was on the boat, Jaladuta, coming to America in 1965, he wrote a very beautiful song, Prayers at the Lotus Feet of Krishna. And he begins the song, Sri Siddhanta Saraswati Sachi Sutta Priya Ati. That my spiritual master, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Sachi Sutta Priya Ati. He was a great devotee of Sachi Sutta, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered him a very, very dear personality. So, Sri Siddhanta Saraswati Sachi Sutta Priya Ati. Tara Sevai Tulinai. His service to Krishna cannot be balanced. It was so much that if you put his service to Krishna on one side of the balance, there is nothing you can put on the other side to make it balanced. Before he started the Gaudiya Math, before he started the Krishna consciousness, before he expanded the Krishna consciousness movement according to the desires of his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sat in Navadvip at the birthplace in Mayapur, at the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in a little straw hut, and he chanted 1 billion names of Krishna. Every day, night and day, for months on end, he kept chanting before he started his preaching mission. Then he moved to Calcutta and he rented a small apartment in a place called Ultadanga Road. And it's a small house with 2 floors and a roof. And on the roof, there is a little room where Bhaktisiddhanta used to perform his bhajan. And in that place, Srila Prabhupada met him, and on the first meeting, Bhaktisiddhanta asked him that you speak English, so you please promote this message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the English-speaking world. So it was his desire. Tar icha balavan pasya chete tan tan hoy jabe gorang giranam. His icha, his desire was so great, balavan, that little by little the message of Gauranga will spread all over the world. Priti viti nagaradi asamudra nadi nadi. All over the planet, from the rivers to the seas, to the mountains, to the sky, the holy name will be spread. And that was done by the great desire of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and that desire was implemented by our Srila Prabhupada. So if you connect to these two great personalities, we can become free because of their desire, not because of our activities, really, not because we have any punya, we have any merit, because there is no merit living in the material world. We see that even people in India who have Vedic culture coming down for millions of years, still they are moving away from Krishna. They are not going towards Krishna. Krishna is not so easy to achieve. It's very, very difficult to achieve, but it can be achieved. Vedeshu durlabham is very difficult to be achieved in the Vedas, in Vedic culture. Adurlabham Atma Bhakto, but it's very easy to obtain from the heart of his devotee. So this is the message, Adurlabha Atma Bhakto. Somehow we take shelter of Srila Prabhupada. I personally experienced that in his busy schedule, Prabhupada allotted time to write his books in the middle of the night, from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. In the middle of the night, he was set up every night, because it was the only time when he was not disturbed by the management and mismanagement of many of his managers. It was the one time of the day and night when nobody could disturb him. So he picked that time, that very valuable sacred time, to write his books. So if you want to take advantage of Prabhupada's mercy, read his books. All of you have a home, all of you have family. It is not difficult. Simply take the Bhagavad Gita or the Krishna book, sit down together and read once a day. Just by that little effort, you will get the mercy of Prabhupada, and by his mercy, you will get the mercy of Krishna. There is no other way. Thank you very much. So we have some devotees here. We have Atma Vidya, Hare Krishna, my humble obeisance to everyone. Dandavats Prabhu, Krishna Premavati, Hare Krishna. Our friend Pranjal Joshi from Jaipur. He says, your godbrother, His Grace Jashamati Nandan Das Prabhu, transitioned on 24th October due to corona and multiple health issues. Please pray for the departed soul. Frankly, there is no need to pray for him. We should pray to him to pray for us, because he's back with Prabhupada. Yashamati Nandan joined Prabhupada very early on in Chicago. He was an engineer and very highly qualified in America, and he came into contact with Prabhupada. He gave everything up and he joined, one of the first Indian devotees who joined Prabhupada. And he established Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada's movement extensively in Gujarat. And there is no doubt that he has gone back to the lotus feet of Prabhupada. So we don't need to pray for him. We need to ask him to pray for us. Hare Krishna. If there is any other comments or questions, please put them please type them up, and I will see them later and answer. Thank you very much. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.